What is up, fellas? We are back for another UFC predictions video. This time for UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Curtis. Uh, let's hope this week's card has less eye poke TKOs. Um, yeah, let's jump right in. New subs on the board, you know the deal. Leave a comment if you're a new sub. Thank you, love you. Mwah. Kicking us off at women's bantamweight, Nora Cornell versus Melissa Mullins. Kicking us off with an absolute unranked women's MMA thrill ride. I'm leaning Melissa Mullins here. I think this line is a little bit wide. Minus 380 seems a bit ridiculous to me. I don't think any women's MMA fighter should be minus 400 over anyone, personally. But I do think Melissa Mullins is the better striker of the two. I think she fought a better opponent in her UFC debut. Nora Cornell kind of got like a. I remember the UFC Paris event very well because I swept the card besides this fight, and I remember distinctly thinking that this was a bogus decision that Nora Cornell got, just because she was French. So I don't rate her win over Jocelyn Edwards that highly. It says unanimous decision. It at least should have been a split, in my opinion. And Melissa Mullins got a very dominant decision over Irene Alexieva, who I think is more dangerous than Jocelyn Edwards. She has power in her hands. She has a good submission threat. I think she had beat a better opponent. She also, I believe, has Dudakova on her record, TKO in round one. Zeleznikova, not Dudakova. Dudakova, this fight got canceled last week. I'm thinking of Zeleznikova. She fought 2 weeks ago. So many unranked Russian ladies. But yeah, Melissa Mullins, I think she just has fought better opponents. I think she's looked better against better opponents, and I think this fight largely is going to take place on the feet. And if that happens, I'll favor her slightly, although I don't like the line of minus 400. Moving up to middleweight, Dylan Budka versus Cesar Almeida. This is a weird fight. It's a striker versus grappler matchup. Cesar Almeida is a guy, very dangerous kickboxer, has a win over Alex Pereira, which is, a little bit spooky, but he hasn't been doing MMA for very long. Clearly, he's 4-0. Dylan Budka, predominantly a wrestler. Now, it's just kind of like, what do you think is going to happen here? Is Dylan Budka going to get bonked in the first minute and die? Or is he going to wrestle fuck Cesar Almeida? And I'm leaning towards Dylan Budka wrestle fucking Cesar Almeida. Budka's kind of a grindy wrestler. He's very tough. He's very good at getting his takedowns. He doesn't really give up on them. He's got the cardio to do it for all 15 minutes. And from the small amount of footage I can find of Cesar Almeida in MMA, his takedown defense isn't the best. Now, I do worry because Budka does like to positionally control people at times and not really throw out a ton of offense. And recently that hasn't been scoring to a lot of the judges, which I think is a good thing generally. But Budka does sometimes rely on that to win fights, and sometimes that isn't enough to win the fight. So there's a little bit of risk there, but I also think the small octagon at the apex is going to favor Budka's grappling, giving Cesar Almeida a lot less room to circle out and try and get out of the way of a potential takedown threat. I think Budka runs him up against the cage, and barring, Budka getting bonked and slept, I think he can grind out a decision here over Cesar Almeida. Little iffy on that one. The line is kind of where I think it would be, though. Speaking of another little iffy fight, Dan Argueta versus Gene Matsumoto. This is a good fight. I actually like this fight because I kind of want to see how good Gene Matsumoto really is. I think Dan Argueta is a good test for this. Dan Argueta, kind of similar to Budka, very aggressive wrestler, pursues his takedown very well, but I think Argueta has much more of a submission threat than Budka does. Good cardio. Striking is a little bit meh. But he has good takedowns and he's got good submissions. Gene Matsumoto on the other side, kind of an all-arounder. He's kind of good at everything. He's good at snatching up submissions, especially if somebody sticks to neck on either side of him in a guillotine position when they go for like a double leg takedown. He's really good at snatching up chokes like that. His striking's very good. Like I part of me wants to pick Dan Argueta because I think he's a good underdog here. I think he's most certainly a live underdog. But I can see Dan Argueta sticking his head into a choke. I really can. And I can also see him kind of getting a little discouraged and spending a little bit too much time on the feet with this guy. And I think that Gene Masimoto is a much better striker, and I think he can hurt Dan Argetta on the feet. Hmm. It's an interesting fight. I think I'm gonna go with Gene Masimoto. Matsumoto. I don't know how to say this guy's name. Matsumoto. I think he just has a little bit more lethality on the feet. I think he's just as dangerous as a submission threat as Dan Argetta. And I think he can also probably stuff a couple takedowns as well. I think Masumoto is going to get himself potentially a decision win here over Dan Argetta, a hard fought decision win because Dan Argetta is going to be there. He's going to be pushing the pace the entire time. But in my opinion, any man who lost to Miles Johns is not that good. Uh, Moving up to women's strawweight, Piera Rodriguez versus Cynthia Calvillo. Guys, Cynthia Calvillo is giving Tony Ferguson a run for his money on how many losses they can get in a fucking row. Granted, all of Cynthia Calvillo's losses are to decent opponents, and I don't think Piera Rodriguez is that good. Am I? Am I gonna pick Cynthia Calvillo? There's no way. Uh, I've been real 50-50 on this one because it's a women's MMA fight, man, and you just don't know, truly. Ugly, ugly. We lost to Jillian Robertson, which isn't the greatest look, but I think Cynthia Calvillo would probably lose to Jillian Robertson too. I think I'm gonna lean Piera Rodriguez. I flip a coin, dude. I don't give a fuck. I think Cynthia Calvillo sucks. She's old. She hasn't won a fight in 6,000 years. Piera Rodriguez, younger. I think a better striker. Also, better grappler. I don't know. Fuck it. Moving up to fight somebody actually cares about. Alatong Haley versus Victor Hugo. Guys, I'm a Victor Hugo enjoyer. I loved his performance on the Contender Series. A guy who can actually get leg locks in the UFC is pretty impressive because normally leg locks are the easiest way to get yourself chinned into oblivion. This guy actually gets them. He's also a really good striker. He's really good everywhere. Victor Hugo. Alatong Haley though, I think is an actual test for Victor Hugo. I think Alatong Haley's actually pretty good. He's very tough. He'll be in your face all 3 rounds. He's got good boxing for a guy with relatively short reach, kind of a smaller guy for the division. I think he could present some problems for Victor Hugo, but at the end of the day, I think Victor Hugo can kind of win this fight any which way he wants, barring he doesn't get caught by something huge from Alatong Haley. I think Victor Hugo probably a better grappler overall, very lethal submission threat, very accurate and good striking, decent takedowns. I just got to go Victor Hugo here, man, over Alatong Haley. I think Alatong Haley's a good fighter, a good tough fighter, but I think he is susceptible to Victor Hugo's game. I think Victor Hugo's going to net himself a submission win here over Alatong Haley, and a fun fight, I feel like. Moving up to women's bantamweight, Norma Dumont versus Germaine Durandamy. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I was really thinking about picking Germaine Durandamy, but I can't, guys. She hasn't fought in fucking like 4 years. I can't. She's 40. But sometimes Norma Dumont just kind of looks like shit. But I'm gonna trust her to beat up this grandmother. Uh Smaller woman, less reach. I think similar striking levels because Jermaine Durandamy does have striking accolades, but sometimes her striking's a little bit hit and miss. Where I think this fight largely should and take place if Norma Dumont is going to win this fight is on the ground. I think she can easily take down Jermaine Durandamy and control her with like no effort. I think Norma Dumont can easily positionally control Jermaine Durandamy and land damage on the ground and go for submissions. I think I'm going to go with Norma Dumont here by decision. I don't mind Jermaine Durandamy as an underdog, but she hasn't fought in forever, and I don't know how she's going to look, and I can't make a pick on something like that. I'm going Norma Dumont decision over Jermaine Durandamy. Close out the prelims at welterweight. Court McGee, Alex Morono. I saw a lot of guys on Twitter talking about Court McGee being like the underdog of the card. Guys, guys, I I don't know about that. Court McGee's been chinned into oblivion brutally in his last two fights in the first round. He has not looked great. He is 40 years old. He's just looked stiff and kind of hesitant lately. And I think Alex Morono, as unathletic as he looks and is, I think he's pretty good at fighting. Like when you break down his record, let's look at Alex Morono's record. His two losses recently are to Santiago Ponzinibbio in 2022. He was winning 90% of this fight. He got caught in the third round, but he was winning that fight against Ponzinibbio. And he lost to Joaquin Buckley in a decision. Joaquin Buckley is a ball of athletic muscle with a ton of power. I think both of these guys are much more dangerous fighters than Court McGee. I just see Alex Morono being able to beat Court McGee here. I think he's a better striker, even though it's weird the way he strikes. His technique is weird, and sometimes it leaves him open, but sometimes that also gives his opponents problems because he throws from weird angles and he's just very awkward, his style. I think Alex Morono is going to probably win. Could he? I think he could honestly TKO Court McGee. He doesn't have crazy power, Morono, but I don't trust in the Court McGee chin as of late. Yeah, I'll be bold. I'll go with the Alex Morono TKO here over Court McGee. I think Court McGee's good, but I think it's just a little bit past uh his athletic prime at this point. And at this point, it doesn't seem like his chin's holding up very well like it used to. So I gotta go with Alex Morono. Opening up the main card at lightweight, Trevor Peek versus Charlie Campbell. Guys, I'm going with Trevor Peek. I'm being picking Charlie Campbell so boring. It's so anti-fun. Fuck Charlie Campbell. I'm going with Minecraft Steve for no other reason than I like him. Trevor Peek, ugly striker, but very dangerous. He throws the standing hammer fist like an NPC. Charlie Campbell's got good boxing. He really does. But beating what the fuck is Alex Reyes? Alex Reyes, Dominic Reyes' brother, that's his name, right? Alex Reyes? I gotta check. I gotta confirm because sometimes I forget names. Alex Reyes, yeah. Beating Alex Reyes, I don't really give a fuck. I actually think Trevor Peek's win over Muhammad Yahya is a better win than Alex Reyes. Uh, even though Trevor Peek looked a little bit weird in that performance, I don't know. I see this fight kind of turning into a dog fight where both guys are just sloppy throwing shots at each other. And in that, like I said, if I need a guy outside of a Home Depot to fight for my money, I'm going with Trevor Peek. He's the Home Depot parking lot warrior. And I want Trevor Peek to win, man. I really do. I also think maybe he could get a takedown on Charlie Campbell, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what version of Minecraft Steve shows up, but I'm going with a Trevor Peek standing hammer fist TKO in round one. Fuck you. Moving up to heavyweight, Walter Walker versus Lucas Brisky. Walter Walker is Johnny Walker's brother, younger brother. He's a mutant freak, disgusting mutant freak, Cro-Magnon caveman monster. He's pretty scary. He's gigantic, and he's pretty good. Got a good chin on him, pretty strong everywhere. I think he can wrestle. I think he's got subs. I think he has heavy hands. I think just genetically that's something they have. They're very athletic. And my thing is if you're an athletic freak at heavyweight at 265, not a lot of unranked heavyweights are going to fucking beat you. And Lucas Bresky, he's been very in his UFC career. He lost to Martin Buday, even though I think he should have won that decision. Going to a decision with Martin Buday isn't the greatest look. Losing to Carl Williams, I think Carl Williams is fadeable in the future because he only wrestles when he gets hurt. And then getting TKO'd in round one by Waldo Cortez Acosta after the stinker that Acosta just had against Andrei Arlovsky. I don't know. It's just not such a good look for me. But Lucas Bresky, I don't know if he's been taking gear. He heard that USADA's gone. He's been taking gear. I've seen pictures of this dude recently. He's fucking peeled out of his gourd. He's shredded. I think Lucas Bresky's an okay striker. but he has no momentum right now, and he's fighting a guy who I think is much bigger, much more athletic, and he can win the fight. I think any which way. I think if it goes the distance, he can go the distance all 3 rounds. I think if he can get a TKO. I think he could submit Lucas Bresky. I think he could take him down too. I just think Walter Walker is going to be kind of a force in these unranked heavyweight fights. I don't know about the minus near 400 line, but I think he'll win this fight. I think he'll probably TKO Lucas Bresky in like rounds 2 or 3, I think. But we'll see. Lucas Bresky's not terrible. I don't want to give you that impression that he's like some terrible fighter. Moving up to lightweight, Ignacio Bahamondes versus Christos Giagos. Guys, I'm going with Ignacio Bahamondes. I still believe in the guy. Losing to Ludovic Klein, I don't really care about. I think Ludovic Klein's pretty good. Christos Giagos, he's beaten a lot of old coots, man. Like, I don't give a fuck if you're knocking out Ricky Glenn. I'd start Ricky Glenn. Give me a break. Bahamondes, decent striker, leaves himself open on occasion, which is dangerous because Christos Giagos does have lead hands, so it's a little bit sketchy, but he's a much bigger guy at 6'3". He's got 4 inches of reach. He's got a much higher output. I think he's going to be able to style on Christos Giagos here in this fight on the feet. I think Christos Giagos might go for a takedown. I don't know if he's going to get it, though, because Bahamondes is so tall. It's hard to take down a guy who's that tall with legs as long as Bahamondes. I think Bahamondes is going to be able to defend the takedowns of Christos Giagos. I don't think he'll get bonked and slept. I think Bahamondes is just going to be able to put a pace on Christos Giagos on the feet, put a volume, striking masterclass together perhaps, and get himself a decision win. I think Giagos is a decent underdog, but I think you probably take him TKO or bust here because he does have good power, and Bahamondes is hittable. But I largely think the side here is Bahamondes by decision, I think. Because I don't think Bahamondes is going to want to put himself in too much danger here. And if he can just keep Christos Giagos on the outside of his shots, I think he will. Moving up to featherweight, Morgan Charrier versus Chepe Mariscal. Guys, this is a fight that I have gone back and forth on throughout all of my research for this card. Morgan Charrier, I think he's really good. I think he's a very technical kickboxer. I think Chepe Mariscal is very grindy. He's got good striking, but he's very grindy and grimy. He kind of likes that dogfight, and he's very good in that. I don't think Morgan Charrier is going to give him that dogfight, though. I think he's a little bit too technical of a kickboxer, and I think he's going to be able to skirt around, circle out, and just poke at Chepe Mariscal from a distance. Now, the small cage might hurt Charrier here. It might benefit Mariscal if he wants to go clinch, get into that dirty Thai boxing range, go for a takedown against the cage or stuff like that. Maybe control him with a clinch. It's possible that that happens because of the smaller cage. But I think Morgan Charrier also, I think he's a stronger guy physically than Chepe Mariscal in those scenarios. I think he'll be able to push Chepe Mariscal off and circle out back into space. I just think Charrier's a little bit better kickboxer than Mariscal, and I think he's going to win a decision here over Chepe Mariscal. I think he's just a little bit better. But we'll see. This is a bit of a 50-50 fight for me because I do think Mariscal's really good and he could fraud check Charrier here, but I don't think he's going to. I kind of believe in Charrier as of late. He's looked pretty good. Moving up to featherweight, Alex Hernandez versus Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson sucks, you guys. Alex Hernandez also kind of sucks. Alex, Alex Hernandez at minus 200. That's funny. Anybody ever seen that before? That's funny. Um, Damon Jackson's susceptible to getting punched in the face, and Alex Hernandez can really punch a guy in the face sometimes. Uh, I think Alex Hernandez's win over Jim Miller is a better win than any of Damon Jackson's recent wins. Pat Sabatini, I'd argue a fluke. Dan Argueta is good, but he doesn't really present any threat on the feet. And Ken Kirk is pretty trash at grappling, you know? I think Alex Hernandez beating Jim Miller in a 3-round decision shows a little bit of evolution for him. I think he's going to be able to find that big shot on Damon Jackson and TKO him. I really do. I'm going to go with Alexander Hernandez by TKO and like rounds 1 or 2. Damon Jackson's been KO'd twice lately. he hasn't looked that great. His stand up is kind of just like, he kind of like just puts his hands out there and he's like, please don't fucking hit me in the face, please. And then he gets hit in the face and slept by anybody who can strike. Um, and I think Alexander Hernandez does present that threat early. I think he'll win probably the first 2 rounds on damage. I think he's way fucking stronger than Damon Jackson. So in those early exchanges, if he can just get like an underhook or a whizzer on Damon Jackson, he'll be able to throw him off of him. I think Alexander Hernandez can win the first 2 rounds based on damage. I think he can probably TKO him in one of those rounds as well. I think he can catch him. I'm gonna go Alexander Hernandez like rounds 1 or 2 TKO. I think over the Leech Damon Jackson. And closing out our card at middleweight, our main event: Brendan Allen versus Chris Curtis. Guys, normally when I see a main event, I have like a pick in my head. I'm like dead set. This one I'm not too sure because I'm a member of the Chris Curtis fan club. I know he whines like a woman on Twitter a lot until he deleted it. Uh but I like Chris Curtis. I like his fights. I like his style and I want to pick him because I think he's a good underdog here at plus 170. I think he's a good underdog here. But my main issue is, people look into their first fight and like Chris Curtis knocked him out. Yes, he did. But my problem is, and I hate to say it, I really hate to say it. That fight was like what, 3 years ago, probably? I have seen gains to Brendan Allen's game over these last 3 years. I have seen him improve over the last 3 years. I have not seen Chris Curtis improve. He has looked largely the same over the last 3 years. And that's a problem for me because Chris Curtis wasn't that much better than Brendan Allen 3 years ago. He caught him with a good shot when they both threw a shot. And Chris Curtis wobbled Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen's shot didn't wobble Chris Curtis, basically. So if Brendan Allen, who's almost at Chris Curtis's level 3 years ago, is making gains to his game, and I don't think Chris Curtis has really improved that much, I kind of feel like Brendan Allen is going to win this fight here. And I hate to say it because I don't really like Brendan Allen that much. Um, I think Brendan Allen could take Chris Curtis down. Chris Curtis has good takedown defense generally, but Chris Curtis gives his back a lot to get up if he gets taken down. And Brendan Allen's submissions have been looking nice lately. He submitted Paul Craig. I believe it was from an aggressive position, like a dominant position, almost like from mount. What did he submit him with, actually? Because it wasn't like off of his back or anything weird. It just says sub. I think it was like an arm triangle or something. I can't remember, though. Don't quote me on that. But submitting Paul Craig, impressive. I think on the feet, Brendan Allen's improved as a kickboxer a little bit. I think his body kicks and his leg kicks will work pretty well against Chris Curtis here, since he is the bigger man. I think Brendan Allen is going to get a submission win here over Chris Curtis in like round 3. That's kind of just what I'm feeling. I hate to say it. I really do. If Chris Curtis wins, I'd be happy because I enjoy Chris Curtis fights a little bit more than Brendan Allen. Uh, Chris Curtis's way is to win here. Uh, Tight defense, heavy hands, good boxing, good takedown defense. He just needs to land a big shot. But I don't think Brendan Allen's going to leave himself susceptible to that a second time, especially because I really do think he has gotten better as a mixed martial artist. And I think he will win this fight, probably by submission. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And I will catch you guys next week for UFC 300, fellas. We are going to go hard on that video next week. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.